G'day everybody. Welcome to the Property Factory's February webinar, February 2024. For those of you that came along to our webinars last year, we promised that we would do a webinar every single month of this year. So they're likely to be the end of each month throughout 2024. We will be covering a brand new topic. For those of you that haven't been to our webinars in the past, my name's Alex. I look after the listing side of things at the Property Factory, and this is Andrew. He's our director. He's the boss. He tells me what to do. Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah, thanks for coming along. It's awesome to see some familiar names on the webinar, but it's also great to see some brand new ones as well. So for those of you that have been here in the past, just the first couple of slides may get a little bit repetitive because we will just touch on who the Property Factory is, what we do and what we're about, just for those that haven't been to one of our webinars before. Tonight's webinar is all about how to purchase an investment property like a pro. Now, what does that mean? Essentially, we're going to look at how to actually purchase the property. So the steps that need to be taken to purchase an investment property, specifically a new build and a property in the new build space. Is that fair enough, Andrew?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, yeah, I guess with buying a new build property, it is a bit different to buying a second-hand property down the street. So we're going to talk about some of the differences and, you know, how we think the process should go to secure the right property, etc.
Yeah, so for those of you that came along to last month's webinar, that was all about how to spot a good deal and a bad deal. Obviously, you know, we spoke about how to spot a good deal, and then the bad deal was essentially the opposite of a good deal, to cut a long story short. But it's all very well being able to spot a good deal. You still need to know how to purchase the bloody thing. Excuse my language. But yeah, so we're going to really cover how to purchase an investment property like a pro and go through the necessary steps you need to take. Now, we've just got this new gadget and I'm just trying to figure out how to work it. So if I share my screen, that's going to work. Yep, there we go. So next slide, if we go, yeah, so here we go. Sorry, excuse me while I figure out how to work this new gadget. It is very flash. I'm actually impressed by it. Anyway, what will we be covering tonight? I know we've touched on it briefly, but who is the Property Factory? We're going to look at some of the common mistakes we see investors make when purchasing investment properties. Obviously, that's all going to tie into how to buy an investment property like a pro. And then at the end, as always, there will be a Q&A session. Just on that Q&A session, if you have a question throughout the webinar, please do ask it, but we will likely answer all of the questions at the end, just to make the most efficient use of time, really. And you might find that there are questions asked during the webinar that we actually intend on answering, you know, in a later slide. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, I guess to begin with, who is the Property Factory and what do we do? Now, for those of you that have been to our webinars before, I suggest stay on the webinar, please do, but there are some really good projects on our website. You should go and scout one out, read through the project, figure out you know, what project is right for you, seeing as you all know how to spot a good deal and a bad deal, at least the ones that were here for the last webinar. Pick the project. By the time you've picked that, within the next few slides, you know, we'll start talking about how to actually purchase it. So yeah, get on our website, have a look at some projects, and then we'll discuss how to purchase it. Yeah. But for those of you, sorry, you go.
I was going to say, further to that, there is a request for contract button on each deal page.
It's a sleazy sales pitch this early on in the webinar.
And anyway, you can request a contract online, as we'll explain in the coming slides.
Oh my gosh, we are here to add value though. You know, we're not just here to sell your property. Anyway, who is the Property Factory? Well, long story short, the Property Factory is a real estate agency that specializes in off-the-plan residential property with an investment focus, catering to first home buyers and investors across New Zealand. So our head office is based here in Christchurch, but we do have an office in Auckland as well. And we've also got a couple of salespeople in Wellington. Now, I guess while we are a real estate agency, we are slightly different to a traditional real estate agency in the sense we obviously specialize in new builds. I mean, there's not a whole lot of companies like ours that specialize in the new build space operating in New Zealand. But other than that, like while we are paid by the vendor, we do a lot of work for you as the buyer. So we obviously do due diligence on all of the developers, and I'll cover that shortly in the next slide. But we also do a lot of the homework in relation to the actual investment opportunity and the numbers around it. So if you go on our website, for example, you'll find a whole lot more information and more in-depth information than you'd find on the likes of a traditional Trade Me or realestate.co.nz advertisement. We like to think that the projects on our website, and just keep in mind that they are the tip of the iceberg in terms of what we actually have listed. We like to think that they are some of the best deals in the country for whatever reason, whether that be for rental yields, cash flows, capital growth, location. I mean, really, there's a number of metrics we look at when it comes to taking on a listing. And so, yeah, the projects on our website are just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what we have listed, but we do think they are really good deals for whatever reason. But we won't bore you with that tonight, because obviously last time we spoke about, how to spot a good deal. Anything you'd like to add there, Andrew?
Not really at this stage.
I mean, you as the director, if I was to ask you as a buyer, why should I use the Property Factory as opposed to anybody else, in not necessarily the market, but why should I use the Property Factory? What would be your answer to purchase an investment property?
I guess especially when you're buying off plan, you need to deal with people that understand how buying off a plan works. So that would be one of the main things, understanding how the process works, which is quite different to buying a house down the street. So yeah, also, as Alex said, we've already done a lot of the homework on the deals, which he'll talk about shortly, including vetting the developers and making sure the property stacks up as an investment, it's good value in the marketplace, and all these things that we're looking at when we spoke last time about how to spot a good deal. So, and plus our salespeople are investment specialists. They can run through the cash flows and all that sort of thing with you. So, you understand how the whole process works. We're forecasting forward, capital gain for that area over a period of time. So you can see what your property is worth in, say, 10 years time based on, metrics, mainly from what's happened in the past, because that's what we use to forecast into the future. And you can see how, your rents go up over time, etc. So we do all that stuff for you. Whereas, as Alex said, like on Trade Me and those sort of websites, the deals are there, but obviously a lot of the information is not, and you have to do it for yourself. So.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. God, this gadget's good, Jonathan. Anyway, so for those of you that have been to our webinars before, this page will be familiar to you. Of course, you won't be looking at it because you'll be busy on our website looking for a project to purchase following this webinar. Long story short, how do we differentiate from a traditional agent and a developer? Well, we do developer due diligence. So on all of the projects we list, we run a range of checks on the developers and the directors behind that company to make sure that everything checks out. Ultimately, we don't want to be listing a property that is being built by a dodgy developer and a developer with dodgy directors behind it. So we run a series of background checks, including a quick search on the New Zealand Companies Office. We can check court records occasionally. And we, sorry, Jonathan's just putting me off. No, we'll just leave it like that, Jonathan. Yeah, sorry, team. And yeah, and then obviously we check a developer's funding and that sort of thing. And we're also off the plan specialist. So what you'll find with the Property Factory is that we do specialize in new builds. Traditional agents don't. Generally, if you purchase off a developer, though, they will have a little bit of an idea as to how to sell a property off the plan and the benefits that come with purchasing a property off the plan. Now, pre-negotiated pricing. All of our listings the pricing is pre-negotiated. So when we take on a listing, often what we'll do is actually sit down with the developer and figure out a pricing strategy that works for both you as the buyer and them as the developer, because ultimately all of our deals need to work for you as the buyer. They do need to be good deals because we pride ourselves on offering good deals to our purchasers. But at the end of the day, they do need to work for the developer too, because if there's not margin in the project, then they can't afford to build the thing, and all sorts of things can go wrong. So the pricing is pre-negotiated. And yeah, which is really good. What you'll find with a lot of agencies is they will just list the development for whatever price the developer wants in order to get the listings. We have the luxury of having an abundance of listings here at the Property Factory, and so we really can pre-negotiate the prices with the developers without the stress of potentially losing the listing if we can't come to an agreement on pricing. I guess we obviously have investment knowledge as well. A lot of our marketing is investment centric. We run cash flows and capital growth projections and that sort of thing. Developers and traditional agents typically wouldn't. One of the biggest things or benefits that comes with working with a company like the Property Factory is that we offer settlement support. So what you'll find is when you go unconditional on an investment property you purchase off us, or it might be a first home, the timeline between the unconditional date, i.e. the date you go unconditional on the contract, and the settlement date is quite long. So what this can mean, or what this means, is that during this time, and when I say long, it might be 6, 12, 18 months, depending on how far out the development is. But during this time, we'll provide you with construction updates throughout the build period. And then when it comes to settlement, somebody from the Property Factory will be there to help you do the pre-settlement inspection. So that's to essentially identify any defects with the property. Often we'll get a building inspector to come along as well and really just have a good look at the property, make sure everything's in check. And if anything were to go wrong, I guess one of the benefits of working with the Property Factory is that we'll always go into bat for you as the buyer, for you as the buyer. We do a lot of deals for these developers, and so I guess we have a little bit more sway than you would have if you were to purchase directly from the developer. And saying that, most developers are pretty good when it comes to rectifying defects and that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, Andrew's going to speak a little bit to the next slide, but we offer a range of tools as well as all of the metrics on the screen there that can assist you in your property investment journey.
Oh, she's warm in here tonight.
Is it? It is hot.
She's warm. So
yeah.
Sun's beaming in.
And he's off to turn the fan on.
So what do we offer at the Property Factory? Well, Alex has already spoken a fair bit about this, but one of New Zealand's largest new build stock lists. As he said, what's on the website is just the tip of the iceberg with regards to what we actually have access to. And probably, we have access to the majority of off-plan stock in the country. And we do have a large stock list beyond the Property Factory deal pages. So yeah, if something doesn't quite suit there, talk to our sales team. We'll probably have something else. As mentioned, we have cash flows and we run all those forecasts for you with regards to equity gain and all that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Investment analysis and research. So we work out what the good deals are, as we explained in the last webinar. We've got the inside information on the developers. So as we were saying, we know which developers would accept deals for different reasons, whether it might be a lower price, a cashback. You might get a 5% deposit if they met their funding requirements and all that sort of thing. So we know which developers are offering which different incentives at different times. And probably the most important one for tonight would be the investment capacity report. And basically, this is important tonight because this report, as well as giving you a really good idea about your own financial position, your own balance sheet, where you're strong with regards to equity as security over debt and income to service debt. It also gives you a pretty good idea about how much money you can actually borrow from the bank. And when we look at the strategy that we would use to buy off-plan property tonight, it's important to have an idea on how much you can actually borrow. Mm-hmm. And it's a quick tool that can do this. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's
so how clear a picture does it actually paint? Like if I was to enter in my numbers, I guess it reasonably accurate?
It's reasonably accurate. I mean, it doesn't look at everything. Like it wouldn't look at, say you had a couple of kids or a couple of cars, it takes into account a little bit, but it might be, maybe it could be 100,000 each way even at times.
Yeah.
I mean, depending on how much you spend as well. I mean, if you've got a spending habit like Alex's on, food and alcohol, then just food. Just food. Just food. Maybe then
a hungry boy or man.
Maybe then, it could be a couple 100,000, but It's pretty
Oh,
good.
that's rough.
It's pretty good though. I mean, like, say for example, the report said you could borrow $1 million and you were going to buy a property for say 800 or 850. We would consider that to be, well within range. So it's a broad brush approach, but it does give you a good idea on what you can afford to buy without actually, having to go through with a broker and get a full pre-approval, which can take time, as we'll talk about in the coming slides.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the point is you certainly, if you're looking at a property and you put it under contract, you're certainly not going in blind, so to speak.
No, that's
You have
right.
a rough
Yeah,
idea
you got
that
a
you can
pretty good
actually
idea.
proceed and purchase the property.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit about our investment capacity report. In terms of our track record, we have worked with about 345 first-time and existing investors, 175 first home buyers. We have relationships with probably 50 developers actively working with at any given time, i.e. live agency agreements, I'd say between 20 and 30. And we've never sold a unit that hasn't been built. And that track record still stands. That's something we're incredibly proud of, and long may it continue. Touch wood. I'm reasonably confident it will, because as I said in the previously, we do a whole lot of due diligence on the developers, and if something smells bad, we won't list the project. Now, we're about to rip into the webinar. For all of you that have been scouring our website, searching for a good deal, because you are all experts, of course, because you've been to one of our webinars before, it's time to come back, because Andrew, he's going to do most of the talking here, because he's extremely passionate about this process. He's drumming on about it every other day. In fact, probably every day. And I sit right next to him. He's going to do most of the talking. I'll ask some questions just to provide a little bit of clarification as we go along. Again, if you've got questions throughout it, please do ask. We'll ask them at the end. And yeah, let's get into it.
Cool. So avoiding mistakes that most investors make. So basically, we deal with a lot of different buyers, whether it be first-time investors, first-time buyers, existing homeowners that are maybe upgrading, downgrading, and experienced investors as well. And a lot of these, there are common mistakes made, especially from, first-time investors that are a bit nervous getting into the game, first-time buyers, about, the process you should go through to actually buy an investment property, especially off the plan. So there are some mistakes that we think people make, and I guess we think a better way to go about it, which we'll talk about tonight. So basically, reserving your property, we'll talk about that. And we have a way at the Property Factory where you can reserve your property and actually have it in a situation where no one else can take that property while you're doing your homework. We'll talk about your get out of jail free card, which is your due diligence clause in the contract, which we have in all of our contracts. Pretty much, we don't send anyone a contract without a due diligence clause in it. We can negotiate the best price for you, and we'll explain how we can do that. We'll explain the best way to get your finances sorted so it's done quickly and, with a broker that really knows what they're doing. And we'll also talk about how to get the right lawyer involved, because when you're buying a property, especially off plan, but any property, it's really important to have the right team in your corner so you're able to make a well-informed decision and be able to, get the finance organised so you can buy a property that suits you. So a few assumptions we're going to make. Buying a new build property is quite different to buying a standard, what I'd call second-hand property down the street. Because it's not completed, there's no title yet, and often, the project is just a concept. So there are quite a few different clauses in a sale and purchase agreement when buying off plan, which you wouldn't normally find. And these are to protect in some cases to protect the vendor, and in a lot of cases to protect the purchaser. So yeah, it's a bit different. So we make a few assumptions there. And yeah, one of the other assumptions is it's going to be an investment property, but the process is pretty much the same if you're buying it as a home to live in.
Yeah. Can I just ask a question? So
yeah, sure.
Obviously you mentioned some of the terms and whatnot in a contract for a new builder are different to that of an existing property, for example. Now, I know you're going to discuss the due diligence clause shortly. I mean, but what other differences are there, I guess?
Some other ones, I mean, another major difference when you talk about off-plan contracts, there are some clauses in there that also protect the vendor.
Okay.
Some of those would be like, they might have to make so many pre-sales for the project to be viable. In some cases, they might still need to get a resource consent or a building consent or that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So some of those ones will be there to protect the vendor.
Okay.
In case they couldn't make enough pre-sales or
Yeah.
whatever. I mean, normally, whereas doing the homework on the developers, generally we're really confident the developer's going to make those pre-sales. Otherwise, we wouldn't take that project on.
Yeah.
Things like sunset clauses are another one that would be in there, and that's with a sunset clause. You're really just looking at, okay, with every sale and purchase agreement, there needs to be an end date, and basically with a sunset clause, you're looking at, okay, well, what's the maximum time that we're going to give this project to get completed? And often that might be a year or two beyond the estimated completion date. And yeah, we're looking there at, mainly it's the developer's funder that decides when that date is. So often that can't be changed, but it's there to protect everyone involved in the process, so that there would be an end date there.
That makes sense
At some point.
Right.
Yeah, that would be some of the other ones. So reserving your property. Now, what we often see with people, especially new time investors or first time buyers, is they spend a long time, maybe 6 to 8 weeks getting a pre-approval. So they might find a property they like, and then they think, right, I've got to go talk to a broker and get a pre-approval. So it could take a long time, might take 6 to 8 weeks to get a pre-approval on a property, but it's not even for the specific property that they are actually like. It's just a
general pre-approval.
Just a general pre-approval. This is how much you can borrow based on, if the rent is this much, and there'll be some other conditions attached to it. It might have to be like a turnkey property instead of a progress payment and that sort of thing. But really, with this process, it can take a lot of time. And if you're a mortgage broker and you have a sale and purchase agreement come across your desk, and it's a live contract. So say, or maybe we'll start the other way. Say you're a broker and you have someone come in to get a pre-approval, and what they're going to do is go to some banks and work out how much this person can borrow. But at the end of it, they may not buy a property. So it really can be a lot of work for a broker, and there's no guaranteed commission at the end of it. Whereas if you came to a broker with a live contract and said, right, we've got 10 days to get finance. Let's go to some banks and organize finance here now. The broker knows at the end of that process, they're going to, if they get finance for you, then they're going to get a commission. So brokers are a lot more motivated to work on live deals as opposed to just getting pre-approvals for people. So yeah, I mean, in a slower market, probably those properties are going to sit around and may still be there once you've got your pre-approval. But in a lot of cases, especially as the market starts to pick up, it's really important to, we think, reserve a property in the manner that we do at the Property Factory, or we recommend to do, and then that property is yours for the period of time. And basically what you would do is request a contract on the property. You can do that on our website.
So there's a request for contract button on every single deal page on our website. It's as simple as that. And
you can do that yourself, or one of our sales team can fill it in for you. And basically that, once that happens, you request a sale and purchase agreement. Our contracts manager here will fill in the details and send it out to you for electronic signing. Basically, the most important thing here is that, so what we're doing here is putting a property under contract, but what we have in all our contracts is we call it the get out of jail free card. And basically it's a due diligence clause. So the idea is
real life monopoly.
Yeah. You would put a property, so we would send you a sale and purchase agreement. You would sign it. You might have a partner or husband or wife that might sign it as well, or business partner or whatever it might be. And basically you would sign that with a due diligence clause in there, then that goes to the developer vendor and they would sign it. And then from there, you've got a live contract. And basically what we would recommend, this is an idea about, or this is an example of a due diligence clause. And basically what it does is allows you to do any sort of investigation you like. So it would be things like getting your lawyer to check the contract, getting arranging your finance with a broker, and doing any other homework you might like to on the property at all. And normally you would have 10 days to do this. And at the end of the 10 days, if you weren't satisfied for any reason, you could just walk away and not have to give a reason. This is
No reason at all.
no reason at all. You could just pull out and say due diligence is not satisfied.
Right.
So in that case, basically what you're doing is putting an option on the property for 10 days and no one else can take it off you during that time. And then you can go ahead and do your homework. Basically, with the broker, when you've got a live deal in place, as we explained, the process is much faster. You can then go and show the sale and purchase agreement to a lawyer. They can go through it and make sure, it all stacks up from their end. There's nothing in there that looks a bit funny, or they might go backwards and forwards with the developer's lawyer a little bit.
Mhm.
And, the whole process works a lot faster. You've managed to get a property that you're after, as opposed to waiting around hoping it's still there when you finish getting your pre-approval. So that's the way we recommend it should be done. What you can do is show your lawyer the due diligence clause and just make sure they're happy with the way it's worded. And as long as they're happy with the way it's worded, then you could go ahead and sign that contract or that sale and purchase agreement, and from there go into that process and take a deeper dive into the project and just make sure it's for you. But at least you have the property
So just
under contract.
so I've got it right. Do most contracts in real estate, for example, an existing property, would that have a due diligence clause in it?
Not always.
An open due diligence clause, I guess.
No, not normally. So
And why is that?
basically, when you're buying a property like a secondhand property down the street, it might be for yourself to live in.
Yep.
There might be, a few other buyers as well, and that property is unique.
Okay.
So it's not like a unit where you could, put it under contract for a period of time. There might be competition from other buyers.
Okay.
And you might need to just lock it down to, you may just need to get finance, and that's anything you're looking for.
Right.
To buy the property, or it might be a LIM report or financing a LIM or whatever it is. And basically you want to make your offer as clean as possible, because there might be other offers, and you want to make yours the most attractive. And often real estate agents would lock you down to one specific clause, whereas
You know your stuff, don't you?
whereas like off plan, it's a bit different, and we would never put anyone into a contract where they couldn't get out of it.
Okay.
And we never have. So
Good to know.
yeah. So the purchasing process, like we've already talked about a little bit, you go onto a website, talk to one of our salespeople, or you just go onto a website and find a property you like. You request a contract through the website. The contract gets populated by our contracts manager. It basically goes out for signing with that due diligence clause in it. All parties sign it, then you have the property, what we call under contract. You've then got a 10-day due diligence period to do all the homework on the property, like we've explained, or like I've explained already.
What happens if I do my homework during that 10 days and it's not quite enough time?
Enough time. Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Basically, what you can normally do is just ask for an extension on the 10 days.
Yeah.
And generally, as long as we're not in a market where there's 3 backup offers, or a backup offer sitting on the property, the developer would be able to give you that time. And generally, they would rather give another 5 days to someone that's already through the process than kick them out of the contract and start again with someone else, where they've got to start the 10 days again, and the clock's ticking from the start. So
yeah, I generally need to give a reason.
Often developers might like to know what the reason is.
Yeah.
If it's just for finance, that's probably the best one, because obviously if you're getting through that far and you're just not quite there with finance, probably the chances are you'll get it. It might be the banks ask you to get a evaluation on the property, and that might be 5 days before a valuer can get to the property, and things like that. So generally, if you give a reason, developers are pretty good and they'd rather work with someone, as I said, that's through
Yeah.
the process a fair way than start again with someone else.
I guess that takes the stress out of actually purchasing the property too, because, while the 10-day due diligence period is there, there's not a whole heap of pressure to get everything done within that 10 days. I mean, there's a bit of
That's right.
leeway there.
There's a bit of leeway there, but at least
You
it
don't want
gives.
it to drag on forever either, because developers won't allow that, I
Exactly.
assume. Yeah.
No, I mean, we want to get the job done as fast as we can, but sometimes it takes longer. But at least then everyone has like a time frame they have to work to.
Yep.
And it gets things done a lot quicker.
Mhm.
Otherwise, even for a lawyer,
Yeah, I suppose for everyone, lawyers, mortgage brokers,
exactly anyone that's
developer,
involved.
even to answer any
Yeah.
questions, there's a time
Exactly.
frame.
There's a time frame there, and that would
Yeah.
even be with say a lawyer. If you just bought them a sale and purchase agreement and said,
Yeah.
have a look at this because I'm thinking about signing it, they're going to put that to the side and it's probably not a priority. So
Yeah.
they might take a couple of weeks to look at it. Whereas if it's under contract, they've got a live deal there and, then they know they've got a time frame to work to.
It's a bit like when I was a young fella at school and I had a homework assignment due in 2 weeks. It wouldn't get done until the last night,
That's right.
Yeah.
But it had to get done.
Did it get done? Yeah, it
You'd be in
always got
trouble.
done. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Anyway, then we decide it's a great deal and we go unconditional. There's no major issues. You've got your finance. From there, you pay your 10% deposit. Now this deposit then it gets paid to the vendors or the developer's solicitor's trust account, and it sits there until settlement. So as we've probably explained in our other webinars, the developer can't touch this money. It's sitting in the trust account until settlement. So if anything went wrong during the process, you would get your deposit back. And in most cases, the deposit actually accrues interest. It might be in a term deposit type account, and that interest gets added to the deposit when you settle. So you might make a couple of $1,000s on that or something like that. So even if you borrow the deposit against another property, you're paying interest on that, but you do get a wee bit of it back in interest that the deposit accrues, even though it might be a bit less, but it makes that cost of borrowing the deposit a bit less. Basically, then your property gets built. Our contracts manager, or client liaison officer, we call it, Officer Patcher.
Yeah.
She will basically give regular updates every month about how your build's progressing, and then when it comes to settlement, she'll take you through that process as well, which Alex will explain a bit later in the webinar.
Sorry, Nicole, if you're watching. Negotiating the best price. Now, when it comes to negotiating a price on a property or the property in question, the best way to negotiate the price is to get an offer on the sale and purchase agreement. A lot of the time, buyers will ask us to hypothetically ask a developer, if they can get X price or 600K on a $650,000 or $630,000 property, for example. Now, every time I ask a developer, or at least 95% of the time, if there's no contract in play, they'll say no, get an offer on paper, because then it's just more real to them, because they've probably got 5 other buyers asking the same question. So if you are looking to negotiate on price, and a number of buyers are in the current market, because while the market's still while the market is heating up, it is still a buyer's market. So get that offer on price because, get that offer on paper, get that offer on price. I'm going mad. Get that offer on paper because otherwise the developer will be reluctant to accept it. And then if they don't agree to that price, it's just a case of going back and forth. The developer may counter that offer and come back with a price somewhere in the middle. And generally we can come to some sort of agreement, at least in an ideal situation. Even if you don't want to ask for a discount and you want to ask for something like a cashback or some sort of incentive, whether that be a furniture package or even a lower deposit. A lower deposit is something a lot of purchasers are asking for at the moment. And that is essentially, instead of paying, say, a 10% deposit to the developer's solicitor's trust account upon going unconditional, you might just pay a 5% deposit. And that may just take away a little bit of financial burden during the process of the build, for example. But again, you need to get the price on paper, and then we can ask for the developer for some sort of incentive alongside that. But definitely get the offer on paper, I guess is what I'm saying here. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there a certain sort of, I guess, what's the main sort of incentive developers are offering at the moment?
There's a few different types, and it comes down to purchaser preferences. One thing, although we haven't seen it in a while, probably is cashbacks.
There's still a few floating
yeah.
around, don't they?
And that's essentially like a discount, but essentially instead of a direct discount, the developer will just pay you some cash on settlement, which can help towards interest costs or a furniture package or whatever. I think in cash is king, right? So, if they offer you, say, a cashback as opposed to a furniture package, then you can do what you like with that cash. It allows you a little bit more flexibility. That's what I would ask for personally.
Pay some of the mortgage with it, or cover some shortfall on rent, etc.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's a really good one. Cool. Getting your finances sorted. Well, a really important thing when buying off the plan is to get the right broker involved. I guess not all
Mortgage broker.
Right. That's right, mortgage broker. And not all mortgage brokers are created equal. There's good ones, bad ones, just like any profession. And there's some mortgage brokers that are they might be really good at existing property, but not so good at off-plan property. And there's a bit more to consider when buying off-plan and getting the right lending. So yeah, really important to get the right broker on your team and someone that really understands what they're doing. An example might be some banks might be really good at lending on small developments where there might only be 6 units or something like that. Whereas, some banks won't lend on projects where there's 10 units. Sometimes it might be more than 10 or more than 18 units. So if you're buying in a bigger development, then maybe some other banks are better. So getting the right broker is important. And also we recommend to the Property Factory you should use a broker instead of dealing with your bank directly. And that's mainly because sometimes you might have a really good relationship with the bank manager at the bank and you do a lot of banking there, etc. And in that case, maybe it's good just to use that particular bank manager. But that's becoming less and less common as we're going into the age of technology. People don't seem to have those relationships the same. And often banks now, you won't even speak to anyone. You'll just fill out the forms online and hope you get approved. So the best thing is to deal with a broker, a good one that can paint a good picture for you to the bank so they can create that picture to the credit team to get you the lending. And yeah, important to deal with the right brokers. And we deal with some really good brokers here at the Property Factory who really understand the process of buying off plan, and any of our sales team can recommend who they are. So you get a good broker, and that can really be the difference between essentially buying a property and not, because without the finance, you can't buy it. So yeah, really important to use the right broker. And again, like I explained earlier, to fast track your loan application, you need to have a live deal in place. Brokers are much more likely, a broker's going to look at a deal that comes over their desk where, as I explained earlier, they get a commission at the end of it if they know they get the finance. Whereas, pre-approvals, they might have a stack of them on their desk and they do them when they get a chance. So a live deal is really important, as we explained. So get a property under contract and then get the finance.
God, that's a good looking development. Just while I think
Isn't
of
it just?
Yeah.
Not bad at all.
That one's New Brighton in Christchurch, one we've listed recently.
Really good, actually. 3-bedroom units, garages, walkway to the golf course.
Yeah. So yeah, close to the beach. There's a park right next door. Sorry, that's a terrible sales pitch, isn't it? But anyway, let's get back to the webinar.
Lonsdale Street.
Yeah.
Check it out. So basically, as I explained earlier, the investment capacity report gives you a really good idea, or a broad brushed idea on, how much you can borrow. So the idea would be to fill in one of these reports yourself or with one of our team, work out whether you're in the ballpark to buy that property. We can ask a few more questions when you speak to us, just to maybe dial it down a bit. And then once you work out you're in the ballpark, or you can borrow a fair bit more than what the property is worth, we would then put you into contract and get you to a broker, and then that cuts out that pre-approval process, which can take a long time and, you know, cost you the chance of getting the property you're after. So yeah, good report, and that gives us an idea of where to go, basically.
Mhm.
So yeah, we've talked about the investment capacity report plenty before.
We'll be off to fill one out after the webinar.
Yep, you will.
It does actually provide value to the purchaser. Like, it is an interesting tool to use, and really just to see where you're at in relation to purchasing investment property, and ultimately your property investment journey. It paints a very clear picture as to what you can afford to buy, and it actually recommends properties based on your financial circumstances as well, which is quite cool. I'm not aware of any other tool in the marketplace
Does
like
that?
Yeah.
No. So it looks at your strengths and weaknesses, and your budget, and recommends properties that fit into these criteria, which is, yeah, it's pretty cool. Choosing the right lawyer and saving money. Well, this is similar to the talk about mortgage brokers, but again, different lawyers have different skill sets. And just because you use a family lawyer for general sort of, could be anything, wills or trusts or any sort of thing you might go to a lawyer for, just because you use you know, a family lawyer for that doesn't always mean they're the best lawyer to deal with a off-plan purchase of a property. So really, again, important to deal with a lawyer that really understands off-plan contracts, and I guess where the pitfalls are. Some, you know, some clauses might be, they might look bad, but, you know, it may not read quite right, but really it's a non-issue. There's a whole lot of different things to consider. So yeah, with off-plan contracts, as we've discussed, there are further terms in there, and they're quite different to a standard contract. So really important to deal with a lawyer that knows what they're doing, and this can save money as well, basically, because they're, you know, they're in the game a lot, and they're dealing with a lot of off-plan contracts, and a lot of these lawyers will often draw up the contracts for the developers as well. They really understand how they work, and they can do a quick job, which saves you money. Yeah, I mean, basically we work with some really good lawyers that are experienced in off-plan, and we recommend them as part of our process. Obviously, you know, you might have a good lawyer that you can use yourself, but you know, we do have ones that we can recommend if you don't have a lawyer or don't have one experienced in off-plan contracts. And with some of these lawyers, if you put a property under contract, because sometimes people are worried about putting a property under contract because, you know, they may not go ahead with it, then they incur lawyers' fees. Whereas some of the lawyers that we deal with, if you do the deal through us and you don't go ahead with it, they won't charge you at all, which can be, you know, save you money, and, you know, removes the barrier for getting you into a process where you know, you can actually buy the property that you'd like. Yeah, so that's pretty important. Anything to add on that, Alex?
Not really, but we do see it is really important to get the right solicitor, because I have seen a few occasions whereby a purchaser selected the wrong one, and it just makes the whole process incredibly more costly and I guess painful than it needs to be. So yeah, definitely choose the right lawyer. And as Andrew said, we recommend.
We do recommend some, and you can see some. Oh, here we go. This is talking about what we sort of said. So if you choose the wrong lawyer, you might get poor advice, mistakes. That can be more expensive because they might spend a lot more time going over it than someone that's familiar with it. You know, you'll get charged whether you go ahead with the purchase or not. So yeah, I guess just important to get the right lawyer involved. As I said, you need to get the right team on your side when buying the property, so everything goes smoothly, and you know, there's no issues or hiccups along the way. So good broker, really important. Good lawyer, really important. So on our request for contract or request to sale and purchase agreement button, when you fill in the form, we do recommend some lawyers, and you can see who they are here, and they're all very good and experienced with off-plan contracts. So if you don't have a lawyer, or your lawyer's not experienced in off-plan, you know, we recommend you can select one of these lawyers, and they're very efficient and can get the job done for you. And if there's any issues, they'll certainly bring them up, and they see a lot of contracts. They've probably already seen a couple for that development. So they've already seen some, they understand it, they can do a quick and efficient job. Yeah, so have the right team on your side, I guess, would be.
Make sure you
my
include
advice
the
there.
property factory in that
Yeah,
team.
yeah, we're part of the team, of course. And then basically, once you're happy with the sale and purchase agreement, you've got your finance, it's time to go unconditional. So
Oh,
when you go unconditional, you pay your deposit, your 10% deposit, and then you haven't purchased that property yet, but you've secured it. So with off plan, when you buy a property off plan, obviously there's no title yet, so you can't settle on the property, but by paying your 10% deposit, you've secured the property. And in a year's time or 6 months' time or 2 years' time or however long the time frame is, when you go to settle it, you'll then own the property, but at least you've secured it and you've locked in today's prices. So you lock in today's, lock in a price now, and then when you go to settle, you settle on that price, but the property may have gone up 10% in value or whatever it might be, but you've secured the property today basically by paying that deposit.
cool.
That's about all there is to that.
Lovely. When you do settle the property, it is important you get your ducks in a row prior to settlement being called, so to speak. So, a couple of things you need to look at when getting your ducks in a row is, so just getting back to the construction timeline, obviously you go unconditional on the property, and then the property might not be built for 6, 12, 18 months, depending on the project you purchase. When you get your initial pre-approval from the bank, that may only be for 3, 6, or 12 months. And so if the build takes longer than that time period, you will need to re-engage your mortgage broker and ultimately go through the approval process in the couple of months leading up to settlement. So that's probably the most important step when it comes to getting your ducks in a row. You might find that your approval still stands, and so there won't be so many issues, but yeah, it is important to re-engage your broker and just make sure that your situation is as it was, prior to settlement or when you went unconditional. It is also really important if you're an investor to start working with a property manager and get some tenants lined up. Now, it is important to note that a lot of developers won't allow property managers to access the property until the property has settled. And that's just because prior to settlement, the development is essentially still a construction site. And for, a whole lot of property managers turning up, because keeping in mind there's probably a few other investment properties in the development to show tenants through and get photos and that sort of thing, it can be a little bit of a logistical nightmare. But it is important to start engaging with a property manager, and you might find that property manager has a specific tenant in mind for that property. But the last thing you want to do is settle on the property and then engage a property manager, because there will be, potentially 2 to 3 weeks of lag time where that property sits vacant. I guess by engaging that property manager prior to settlement, you can minimize that time, if that makes sense, because ultimately you don't want to be covering that cost to own, within the time that the property is vacant. So yeah, we want to minimize that vacancy time, and that can be done by engaging a property manager as soon as possible. And we do recommend property managers here at the Property Factory. There's a few of them we work with, so please do reach out if you're looking for a property manager. You may find one's not quite the right fit for you, so there are other options as well. Pre-settlement inspection. Now that's super important. Essentially, basically, with any new build, you as the purchaser are entitled to a pre-settlement inspection prior to settling and ultimately paying in full for that property. Now, this is generally done a week or 2 before settlement, and it's basically your chance to identify any defects with the property or in relation to the property. Now, you can go through the property, pick those defects up, and they might just be minor defects like paint splatters, or the carpets might not be cleaned to a high standard. So it's important to identify those issues. Somebody from the Property Factory, provided of course you purchase off the Property Factory, will be there to assist you with that pre-settlement inspection. And we often advise our purchasers to take a builder along with you, or a registered builder practitioner along with you. Get a builder's report done, because they're experts in that field. And you might think that because the property's a brand new property, there's no reason to get a builder's report. But chances are that builder will pick up, any small defects with the property that you or I wouldn't pick up, for example. So, you wouldn't purchase a brand new car with scratches all over it. So why would you purchase a new build property? But for the most part, developers are pretty good at finishing their developments to a really high standard. I guess it's just a quality control thing. And of course, if there are any defects, the developer will fix those defects prior to settlement. And then generally there always is a 1-year maintenance period following settlement as well. So for any minor defects, the developer will fix those up to 12 months after the settlement date. And then there is a 10-year structural period pursuant with the building defects. So if anything was to go horribly wrong with the structure of your property within 10 years of settlement, then the developer is essentially obligated to fix those issues. And that's a huge plus when it comes to purchasing a new build property.
And even with the builder's report, it's good because it gives you a paper trail if there's things that need to get fixed. You've got a report there, you can give it to the developer and say, hey, these are the issues. And it just formalizes it all. Yeah,
we actually had a situation today whereby a purchaser took a builder through a property. There are a few defects picked up. That building report was there. So what I did is I just snipped a few pages out of that building report, sent them through to the developer and said, hey, these are the issues. Can you please fix them? And it was just really easy to outline in a sequential manner what the issues were, rather than saying, hey, you missed this bit of paint in the right-hand corner in the living room, or the right-hand upper, you know what I mean.
Those pin stickers on the wall, fix those things. Whereas the builder, someone doing a building report takes a lot of photos as well. So you don't need to go through with a, notepad and put stickers all over the wall, etc. So it's a good way to do it.
I'm just conscious of everyone's time here. The other thing you definitely need to do is set up insurance. Now, often insurance for the dwelling itself will be included in the residence association if it's a townhouse development, or a body corporate if it's an apartment development. For a standalone house, it won't be. You'll have to organise your own. But it is important to note that this insurance is only for replacing the dwelling itself. It's not contents insurance, and it doesn't include landlord's insurance or anything like that. So, while insurance is included in the residence association or body corporate, often there will be some component of the insurance that you as the owner will need to set up.
I mean, if you did want to get insurance,
if you want to protect yourself.
That's right. I mean, if a tenant was to damage something within the property or something along those lines, then you would need landlord's insurance for that. But it's replacement insurance for the building if something major happened to it.
Yep, for sure. Now, during the build timeline, if you do purchase off the Property Factory, our lovely client liaison officer, Nicole, will help you out throughout that construction period. So she's in charge of providing build updates to clients and that sort of thing. And she'll also conduct the pre-settlement inspections with you and essentially go back and forth between yourself and the developer to rectify any issues. So that's, again, a huge plus of working with the Property Factory.
And provide updates along the way, etc. So you know where your project's at and what to do when it settles.
So that's really the ins and outs of the webinar. I mean, obviously, we've covered how to purchase investment property like a pro. I think probably the biggest takeaway from the webinar itself, I mean, in my mind anyway, Andrew, is that due diligence clause is really crucial.
I think so. That's super important. I wouldn't buy anything off the plan without a due diligence clause in it.
But it is a really good way to secure your property, i.e. sign the contract, cast your eyes over the due diligence clause.
Maybe show your lawyer the due diligence clause so they're happy with that, and then get the property under contract, then it's reserved for you. And then you've got time without worrying about losing it to someone else to do your homework, get your ducks in a row.
Don't say as Alex would say, because somebody wrote it down there.
Someone wrote it down there. Well, anyway, get things lined up. So get your finance, get your lawyer to check it out, make sure it all stacks up. And you can do that without having to worry about losing the property.
For sure.
And you won't wait 6 or 8 weeks to get a pre-approval and miss out to someone else.
Now, I just want to quickly bring everyone's attention to, I don't want to call it a seminar. I don't want to call it a project launch. I guess it's a project showcase, as we've put here. It's in relation to a beautiful, beautiful apartment block we are selling down in Birkenhead in Auckland. Now, this apartment block is on Macoya Road. It consists of 77 luxury apartments overlooking both the Waitemata Harbour and Auckland CBD. I was there on Friday, actually. It has beautiful, beautiful, beautiful views. In fact, probably, it would have close to the best views of any new build apartment complex in Auckland. The views truly were breathtaking. There's 1 to 3 bed options within the development, and prices are starting from $729,000. Now, we have spoken to a number of purchasers about this particular development, but you can't actually, I guess, comprehend the scale and the beauty of project in full until you're actually on site in the display suite. Now, the display suite is located on the site itself. And one really cool thing the developer has done is actually set up scaffolding on site. So you can climb up the scaffolding and see the views from the corresponding floor of the development. It's a really good way to actually see which views your unit or your chosen unit within the development will get. So yeah, we just decided, let's do a project showcase or an information evening on site, because it's just so hard to conceptualize the project without being on site yourself. And we'll have drinks and nibbles there, complimentary food and drinks. We'll have Darren, the developer, there as well. And then Anza, one of our investment sales specialists up in Auckland, will be there too, to look after everybody there and make sure the evening runs seamlessly. There'll also be a really, really cool personalized on the night offer at the project showcase as well. I can't speak too much about it now, but all I can say is it's far more fun, it's far more interesting, and it's far more creative than any project offering I have seen in the property development space in recent times. It's really personalized, and I think you'll like it. It's certainly worth coming to the event to find out exactly what that offering is. So look, if you're in Auckland on Thursday, the 21st of March, between 6:30 and 7:30 p.m, please do come along. We're going to send out an email after this webinar with a expression of interest form or an inquiry form, Jonathan, which will essentially allow you to sign up. And ultimately details will be sent out to you to come along to the event. It's going to be an awesome evening. So yeah, we hope to see you there. Other than that, we are happy to take the floor for questions. Now, I haven't actually seen what questions.
Is there any questions there?
Give me a tick. There's only a couple of questions tonight, which is
the
good. I'm
same
conscious of
process
time.
people looking to buy a second-hand home. It's the buying process is a bit different, buying a second-hand home. With a second-hand property, you're obviously, there's no build time frame, the property's finished. You can go and look around it, and you're probably competing with other buyers if it's a good property for that, to purchase that property. So basically, what you'd do is you'd make an offer a bit different. Generally, you couldn't put a due diligence clause in there because, it's not a very clean offer, because, for the vendor of a second-hand property, they could walk away for, any reason during that time. Whereas, when buying a second-hand property, you'd more likely have to make an offer subject to specific things. So it might be finance, you might want to get a LIM report, check the title, those sorts of things. Whereas when buying off plan, you can just, put a due diligence clause in there, which is quite acceptable, which it wouldn't be with a second-hand property. And also, with a second-hand property, when you pay your deposit, it's automatically released to the vendor, because you're probably going to settle the property in 30 days or, whatever the time frame is, and that deposit's released, so it's gone once you've confirmed on the property. Your deposit's released after 10 days to the developer, or no, to the vendor, sorry, and the real estate agent takes their commission out of it, etc. So that's a bit different as well. Also, there's not all those further terms in a standard sale and purchase agreement to buy a second-hand property. It's more just about, as I said, the things that we've locked down.
He's here, sorry. I mean, for people that already have a property and looking to buy the second home.
Oh, right. If someone's looking to buy their second home, if it's an off the plan property, then the process is the same. The investment capacity report would take into account, any properties, any assets you have, and any income you receive off them. So we work all that out for you. So yes, the process is the same whether you've bought a property or not before, as long as it's off plan.
Wonderful. Do we charge a fee? No, we don't. Not to you as the buyer. The vendors pay us for selling their properties ultimately.
Developers pay us.
Justin, are we able to share a list of mortgage brokers you recommend, like you did with lawyers? Of course. In fact, if you go onto our website and request a contract, now you can find that on any of our project pages. Click the request the contract button. That will take you to the RFC or request for contract form, and there will be a list of mortgage brokers and their contact details there, I believe.
Yeah, so you don't actually have to request a contract,
No.
but you can open the form, go down to the broker area, and we do have some brokers in there that we've recommended. Based on your own situation, one might be better than the other, or we might have another one that we recommend. And talking to one of our sales team would be a good way to work out exactly, which broker is best for you.
Next question, should I view the property before I am under contract? Now, look, people do. Personally, if there was a scarcity of that particular property type, I wouldn't. I'd wait to get it under contract and then go and view it, especially if it's an investment. Because ultimately, if you're purchasing a property as an investment, it's all about the numbers. We really try and take away, I guess, the emotional side of things when it comes to purchasing an investment property. Obviously, you want to see the property you're purchasing. But if there's only a couple left, or the developers are looking at putting prices up, which we have seen in a couple of instances recently, I just get that property under contract and go and view it during due diligence. That'd be the best way to do it.
I think so, especially if the property is out of town. So we have buyers that might be in Auckland, or, for example, someone might be in Auckland and they're buying a property in Christchurch. We'd recommend you wouldn't want to go and view that property, spend all that money flying down to Christchurch to view a property and then find out that you've missed out or whatever. So definitely get the property under contract and then you can go and view it. Sometimes there's nothing to view because it's off plan. So you can go and have a look at the site where the property is going to be built, but there's not actually anything to look at. In other cases, we do have some finished new builds, which you can go and look at, or you can go and look at the developer's show suite, which would give you a really good idea about the finishes, fittings and fixtures and all that sort of thing, and how the property is actually going to look when it's finished. So you could do all that. And generally at the property factory as well, if you put a property under contract and you had to fly from somewhere around the country to view that property, if you end up confirming on the property, we'll reimburse your flights. So that's something we do offer.
Why can you only see a few properties on our website, not a big stock list? Look, there is only a few properties on there, and I mean, there's more than a few. There's probably, I don't know, maybe 20 or so. But if we were to put every single property we have listed on our website, it would be an information overload. I mean, our job at the Property Factory is to find you the very best deals in the marketplace. And while we have access to a range of stock, I mean, I don't necessarily think it means they're all great deals, Andrew, but I think the ones on our website are the ones we really want investors to be looking at.
I think for investors, they're the best deals. If you're a first-time buyer, potentially not, if you're looking for something specific. And then it would just be best to talk to our sales team and they can have a look at the wider stock list and just see, whether there's something there that is suitable for yourself. But yeah, as Alex said, it's too much to put it all on there, and we generally try and keep it to about 6 developments in each location because it's it's just easier.
We have in the past had a whole heap on there, but it sort of just got confusing both for buyers and salespeople and that sort of thing. So look, if you want to see more properties or you have a specific location or property in mind that's not on our website, just reach out to anyone on our website. Any one of them will help you. They'll sit down with you, book a chat, whether that be in person or via Zoom, and really try and find the best result possible for you.
Do you only work with people that are ready to buy?
Oh,
Also
okay.
work with people to help get them work through a
Yeah, so
plan.
essentially, I think what they're asking is, can we help purchasers create a plan to get them into either their first home or first investment property?
We can. Probably we do have another business called Thrive Investment Partners. And what that business does is actually creates plans for people based on, you might have a retirement income goal, or you might want to build a property portfolio to a point where you're living off a passive income at a certain, date and time or something like that. And with that business, we can actually help people. It's a financial advisory business, and we can help people create plans that, I guess, say for example, you wanted to live off 200,000 a year in 10 years' time. We would work out a plan based on your current assets, what sort of properties you need to buy and when you need to buy them over that 10-year period to build an equity base to reach whatever that goal is. And yeah, we more set up plans for people on that business to look up Thrive Investment Partners, and we can set up plans for you there. But yeah, the Property Factory, we will help you select the right properties based on your situation, and because it's important to start right. But if you actually want a long-term plan, then Thrive would be the ones to talk to.
Yeah, the investment capacity report, and saying that's interesting in the sense it really does help to determine what your strengths and weaknesses are. So, for example, if it's your income holding you back for purchasing a property, I guess the investment capacity report would portray that. And I guess our advice, while it might seem relatively straightforward, and Thrive would give you a much more detailed answer, would be to get your income up, for example, right?
That's right. Yeah. So we do work with the basics. So if income is holding you back, then we'd recommend high income properties, because that's where you're going to run out of lending before you run out of lending from an equity point of view. So yeah, we can make those sort of recommendations for sure. Yep. So I guess it depends on how detailed you want the plan to be.
Yep, for sure. Okay, well, that looks like it is all the questions. Thank you so much for coming along, everybody. It was great to see you all again, and some new names and faces there as well. Now you should all know how to purchase investment properties like a pro. And it is important to note that this process is still relatively applicable to purchasing your first home as well. Yeah, we'll be back next month with a new webinar. Again, it will likely be the end of next month. And yeah, we'll go from there. But again, please, if you're interested in coming along to the Chelsea Rise Information Evening in Birkenhead, please do fill out that expression of interest form. We'll send you later on, because it is going to be a really, really good and informative and interesting evening. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks everyone for coming along.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
See you next time.
See you next time.